it can be a little tricky to manage the grid in model space and in layout space. There are two different grid settings. One grid setting is used to control the step size in model space. Let me right click and go to drafting settings. Here I've set my grid at a 1 meter grid with bold steps every 10. So the grid will show at 1 meter and there'll be a larger grid dot every 10 meters. And it may be a little difficult for you to see on this black screen, but that's a major dot there and another major dot there. So if I measured from one major dot to another major dot, I should get somewhere close to 10. I could put the snap on and I could click to that major dot and go across there, and I'm going across in steps of 1 meter. So this time we can get an accurate measure of distance from there to there, 10 meters. So that's how we can control the grid. I'll take snap off because that can be a little tricky, and it of course grabs the cursor. So that's model space grid settings. A setting of maybe 0.5 meter or 400 millimeters if you are laying out paving bricks can be really useful. If I use view and turn my background color back to white, you see it's quite hard to see the grid, although I can see the major grid relatively easily. Let me reverse that and I'll go back to a background color of black. Now when I go into layout space, well, notice too in the status line grid shows as red when it's on, and the F7 key will also put it on or off. It's a toggle. So I could take the grid off in that way or back on again. But when I come to layout space, can you see the red grid setting disappears? In this case, if I right click and go to drafting settings, can you see my grid now is set 1 millimeter grid with steps every 10 millimeters. So we have two different grid settings, one suitable for layout space and one suitable for model space. So if I cancel from there, let's turn the grid on and we'll jump in. Now again, the grid is a little hard to see, but if I turn my snap on now, I should be able to jump from setting to setting as I'm coming in here. It's really quite difficult for you to see, but let me click 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I hope you can see that my cursor is jumping, and there should be a major grid point at that point there. Not quite sure, we've never done it before, whether I could turn the background of layout space back to black so that you could see it. I think in this case you're just going to have to accept that there is a grid on now, and it's very useful because you'll often use a grid to lay things out. If I wanted a rectangle and put a rectangle in, let me put, and snap is on, when I place the rectangle like so, the rectangle sits on the grid, and if I click on it, you should be able to see that its width is 80 and its height is 40. So using snap and grid in layout space helps you lay things out very, very neatly indeed. What I'm doing, just incidentally, what I'm doing here is, and let me turn that back to white just so we can see it, is trying to group up a whole lot of blocks. So here's a outdoor seating and an L-shaped bench, lighting, symbols and so on. So a whole lot of symbols to do with furniture. An example of a legend, a bike rack, which has already got some paving and a picture of a top view of a bike there. And over here, some examples of water storage, some slimline tanks and a feature wall and a water rill discharging into a circular area. Here are some drainage symbols. That's useful because if I click on that line there, you can see it's set with a line type divide 2, so it's suitable for stormwater. So if you use these symbols, those settings of line type, scales and so on come with them. But I digress. I hope that has cleared up the grid for model space and the grid for layout space.